Carl and Lou here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short. It is Freddy's Nightmare Season 1. We're up to episode number 14, Black Ticket. It's written by Howard Lakian and directed by George Kazender. This is probably one of the more famous ones.
Yep.
More famous simply because of who it stars. It stars an extremely young, pre-famous Brad Pitt.
Not by much though, because I think Thelma and Louise was his big main role, and that was quite soon.
Where did that come out? Did that come out in the 90s or 80s? Because Freddy's Nightmares is late 80s.
Thelma and Louise is early 90s.
There you go.
93. 90.
Yeah, but he wasn't famous. Thelma and Louise didn't make him famous.
They put him out there.
It put, 90s, that was
That's
a big
after
one.
Thelma.
Yeah, but that was... I don't think Thelma and Louise was the big... Maybe, like, not on the map of people audience-wise. I don't think it did. Maybe I don't think it did. I feel like I don't think it did. When I think of, like, okay, where did people really start talking about Brad Pitt? For some reason, I think of Legend of the Fall. Even though I've never actually seen that movie.
I have lots of times at 90, 94, 95. So it's after Thelma and Louise. It was a big push for him because everyone was like, "Who's this young hot guy?"
Okay, all right. I didn't know that. I've never seen Thelma and Louise. Why would I? It's been parodied and joked about and referenced and stuff like that. I don't plan to anytime soon either. But anyway, let's not get stuck in the Brad Pitt thing. Even though he is the star of this, and the star of both segments. In fact, both segments are completely related. There is no second story. Well, it is a second story, but there's no like, oh, here's a minor character or secondary character stepping up into it. It's just, here's one part of their story, here's a later second part of the story, with one massive problem that really hurts this overall episode for me. The link between the two. The thing that happens at the end of episode 1 or is revealed in segment 1 that doesn't ever get referenced in segment 2. No. Leaving you wondering if A, did that happen?
Yep.
But it must have, or B, like, why not just reference in a throwaway line? I am, of course, talking about the fact that... So basically, we'll get to it. They're a young couple. Brad Pitt and his girlfriend, Miranda Kerry Brennan. Brad plays Rick. He plays Rick. Yeah. They're a young couple who are in love and I've had enough of being kept apart and told what to do and all of that and so on. So they're eloping. They're leaving Springwood to go to San Francisco. Yeah. That's what they talk about a lot and so on. But of course, they end up running into car troubles and end up having to walk and stuff like that. They get robbed. And then this is where the crazy stuff starts happening. So there's almost a car accident and so on. And unfortunately, I feel like the episode telegraphs this immediately from what happens, because what happens is a series of extremely surreal nightmare situations that are fun to watch. You've got they're being robbed by the old couple, which is funny as hell. It actually is like it nails that Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street cheesiness of it. What I could easily believe that was just Freddy being Freddy in disguise, that kind of thing, as he often does and stuff like that. But they get robbed, lose all their money, and end up like staying at a little motel. And there, more weird things happen as well. They're in a honeymoon suite, then they're not. The owner's really odd. Say a young Bill Moseley makes an appearance as a tow truck driver in this episode as well. So there's a lot of familiar faces. And the frantic nature, like when Rick gets arrested by the cops and then ends up killing them by accident. It all goes off the rails.
Yeah, the motel's all like fish themed, isn't it? There's all weird fish everywhere. Oh, yeah.
It is very energetic.
It's what it should be.
Keeps the pace up nicely. And thanks to, hopefully, a really memorable actor, creates a watchability. Even though he's young, even though he's far from the superstar he'll be in the future, he's perfectly good as well. He's nothing wrong with him. And him and Miranda, Rick and Miranda, I think they've got great chemistry. I genuinely believe
they're an actual couple.
They're an actual young couple who are slowly beginning to realise that maybe they couldn't do this on their own. And maybe because she's obviously the first to start have doubts about it and stuff like that. He's quite insistent. Sometimes he gets a little bit too insistent, where it's really intriguing to see where he's older than he is, but he's playing younger. But then he acts like a right stroppy teen at certain points when she's like, oh, maybe it's not such a good idea. Maybe we should go home. Or maybe we should call my parents and stuff like that. They do end up calling their parents, but they get the messages left for them where it's their parents are mocking them for what they did and stuff like that. So there's a theme. And the theme is about rebellion and about like that pressure to be something you're not, and the struggles that youngsters will have ever trying to break it their own, and how someone's eloping isn't the answer, and all these fun elements like that. But it is weird. And it doesn't really have a thread, like a thread that you can, it's a thread that's fraying constantly. Because it's trying to be like, look at these imaginative things we can do. Look at we can do this and we can do that and so on. As I said already, I feel like the episode does telegraph itself quite severely early on. That if you've seen this show before, if you've seen any horror really before, the car that almost hit Rick, oh no, it does hit him, sorry. It does actually hit Rick, but he's fine.
Yeah.
You know he isn't.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's what we kind of cut back to, suggesting that the entire thing, what I would have thought, the entire thing was basically Rick's dying dreams.
Yeah.
Is what, this is your life kind of thing, and so on.
Because he gets hit.
And it's pretty severe hit.
And and then the next scene, is Miranda talking to the old couple and he just jumps up.
Yeah, which is how it is.
Oh.
But when we come back to that scene at the end of the segment, she's like crying over his crumpled body. So implying he died, right?
Yeah.
Or at least he should be injured and so on. And this is the biggest problem, is the second segment, he's perfectly fine. Yeah. He's not limping or hurt or so on. How do you not do a throwaway line where in the segment where they're talking, Miranda and Rick, at some point, she references the time you spent in the hospital.
Yeah.
The 6 months you spent in hospital. Reason my parents supported us during that period. It's why we're back.
Yeah. Never mentioned.
It's just like it didn't happen. So you start to wonder if the entire second segment isn't a dream as well. Yeah. Except it doesn't explain that well, and certainly doesn't suggest it at any other point.
No, because it takes you out of the dream and then you go back into it again.
Yeah, because we actually are out of the dream and into separate dreams here as well. So that's my biggest complaint. That, if you're going to use those exact same characters, you could have easily explained that away. And I reckon, again, that's going back to what I said in a previous video, that's where you're snipping.
Yeah.
And I'll bet there was a bit like, oh, don't snip that out. And it's like, but we need those 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And it's just like, okay, well, people will put 2 and 2 together. Yeah. It's like, oh, guys, in this one, you really don't do 2 and 2 here. You need it. However, all that being said, oh my God, I love the second segment.
Yeah.
It is absolutely brilliant, and it shouldn't be, because it actually isn't really horror-based and all that. It is simply based around the fears of what will happen if you have a kid. Yeah. What can happen if you have a child. And it is done brilliantly by 2 actors who are 10 times better than they were in the first segment, but also through clever visuals, dream and real, and with a, dare I say, a really strong message at the end.
Just go back. Was it Woman who wrote it? Remind me.
Who?
Was it Woman that wrote the story?
Yeah, no, Howard Lackian. No, that was the previous episode. So no. But just because it was a dude that wrote it doesn't mean he doesn't. It may have been things he dealt with, or whatever, or his wife dealt with, or his mother or sister, anyone around him. Well, like I said, just because he's a dude doesn't mean suggest that he wouldn't at least think. And because don't get me wrong, there's nothing deep here. It's dealing with the most basic levels of the fears of a young person might have. So basically, Miranda starts to worry she's pregnant, and is really unsure about having a child. If she is.
The receptionist's funny though. She's just blatantly like, how human resources would have her for.
Oh yeah. Of a certain time, like she's worried how it'll affect her job, and she dreams about basically she's a receptionist at a record label, and it suggests that the boss of the label is pretty much like, yeah, if you're pregnant, get out.
You're not hip and young.
Yeah, basically, which is crazy considering the job she does. She's a receptionist. Calm down. She's not like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure she could do that while pregnant, heavily pregnant, and beyond as well. I understand potentially maternity leave afterwards might be a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
But hey, the law says otherwise, so get in the bin.
But so, I like the idea of because obviously looking back to the early 90s, and like the ideas of shifting ideas of women don't have to have kids, and if they do and stuff like that, it was the whole bit more choice of it and stuff. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, because they could have also written it in a way that Rick was anti the kid, being a man, my freedom and all that, and so on. But that's actually not how it's done. He's happy to have the child. He's convinced they'll manage, but also that he'll pick up the slack. So of course, naturally, she dreams that that's not the case. And their sex life takes a hit, and all these issues start to, and obviously it's done in some serious dream stuff, as you say, did later, but also some silly stuff where it's done from like her being a poor mother or being an irresponsible mother, and all these elements, all these fears that I imagine, and being a man, I can only think of. But then, mind you, I am a father, so I've got some at least that all parents and mothers will go through. Am I good enough? Am I able to cope with this? What if I struggle with this? What if I struggle with that? What if my partner isn't as supportive? What if my partner goes off me? What about my body? All these things are brilliant, like really, really good. Do they belong in a Freddy's Nightmares? Absolutely not.
But they do take it to the extreme, don't they?
Of course, that's the one benefit.
That was
it does take it to the extreme. It does continue to be very, very cheesy and silly and dream-like, which is its one saving grace. But it's way more interesting to watch because of its story, I think. Even though I don't necessarily think it's a good Freddy's Nightmares, and if you showed anyone it out of context and said, this is Freddy Krueger, they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
But you know how we've talked about Freddy's Nightmares in recent times not necessarily having the darkest of endings and maybe going for a lighter tone? This one has a nice, delightful darkness to it that I enjoyed. Even though I didn't want it for the characters because I'd liked them and enjoyed them so much. So basically, she finds that she's not pregnant and she's happy about that, bouncing around the room. She ends up falling off the bed and cracking her head on the floor. We then cut to Rick in hospital talking to a doctor. Would she be okay? Would she be like this forever? And so on. And the doctor's like, look, we have no idea, and so on. And we cut to her and we see basically that she suffered a brain injury that's reverted her to an extremely young age. Yep. She's dressed in like very childish clothes, playing with dolls out of bed, clearly away with the fairies, as they say, suggesting that, after all of that, she's regressed to being a child herself, and that, I guess, will mean the end of her and Rick's relationship, and so on.
Or he stay by her and care for her, I don't know.
Unlikely. She's probably going to stay in a hospital, I'd imagine, because, she's got, she's got mental illness. It is a bleak ending, and it is a sad one, because I wanted a happier ending for these characters, but that, to me, speaks volumes about the quality of the overall episode, that I cared enough that I was like, even though I delight in the fact that Freddy's Nightmares episode 14 should I say, had this darker ending. It's more in keeping with the tone of the show, elements like that. Does Freddy Krueger even really matter in this? Of course not, but overall, the two segments work nicely enough together, ignoring that like crossover bit of him being hit by the car and what happened there, which does annoy me. It's two strong segments linked up nicely together, telling two separate but interesting stories based around two characters that are both watchable, well acted, and likeable. Can't ask for any more than that, I think. No. Episode 14, Black Tickets. Got any thoughts? You know what to do? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website, where reviews, news, and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at gbhbl. Just search for gbhbl and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.